So, sighting the shot, incredibly important, and that's why I thought we'd start here in this video. So, I think the problem is if players start to worry about technique and getting down on the shot, where they stand, where they're placing their feet at first, before they understand sighting, I think possibly you could stand in a certain way and then have to reverse it once you understand sighting. So I think the best place to start is fully understanding how you sight a snooker shot, and then from there you can mould your other technique around that. So what are the really important things about sighting? So the first two big things I want to talk about is there are essentially two stages to sighting. One is where you stand before the shot. So when you see a player chalking their cue and they're getting ready to play a shot, where they're standing, that is stage one of sighting. Now the second stage is what it looks like when you actually get down onto the table and you've got your chin on the cue and you're looking at a shot. Where is your head positioned on that cue? That is the second stage of sighting. Now, those two things aren't necessarily connected at all. So you don't want to think that just because you find out, which we'll look at in a second, just because you find out about a certain dominant eye or you use one eye when you're down, that's important when you're standing up and vice versa. So we're going to look in detail about how it is important. Now, the first thing to find out for a player is which one of your eyes is your dominant eye. Now, for almost everybody, our brain does pick a dominant eye, but there are a very small number of people where you don't really get that dominant eye. So you'll find that you'll do the test that we're about to do in a second, and your brain doesn't really pick between one of the other eyes. But for most people it does, and we'll address the fact that if it doesn't in a second, how we can overcome that. But what you'll probably find is, so for me, for example, I know I'm right eye dominant. So if I was to do things like shoot a gun, I naturally want to close my left eye and use my right eye to sight. Now obviously that doesn't work in snooker because I can't close one of my eyes. I need both of my eyes open when I'm sighting the shot. So this is where it's really important to understand that dominant eye and what's important. So let's do a test then to find out which one of your eyes is your dominant one. So you can see I've put the cue ball over at that side cushion there, so I'm standing a bit away from it there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually form a little circle with my hands here to look through. So if I just overlap my hands like that until I form a little circle, so I've got something to look through. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my hands straight out in front of me. So I don't want them going like this. I want them straight out in front of me like that. And then what I'll do is I'll look at that object. So you can do this at home as well. You can do this with any object that's just in the distance away from you, about 6, 7, 8 foot away from you, and do this test. So I've got that white ball position there. I'm staring at the white before I start, got that little circle formed, and then I bring my hands right up in front of my face there, so I'm looking at that white ball through that little circle. Now if I close my left eye, that white ball stays exactly where it is and I'm still looking at it through that circle. And that's because I've got my right eye open and I'm right eye dominant. Now if I close my right eye, that white ball disappears and I'm just looking through a different circle, or I just end up looking at my hand. But the circle you see is nowhere near where the white ball would be. So that shows me that my right eye is my dominant one. Now, just one more thing to clarify here. Just because you might have a dominant eye, which most of us have, so for me it's my right eye, doesn't necessarily mean that that one will be the one with the better vision. Sometimes people have got a right dominant eye, but the one with better vision is actually their left eye. But for the purposes of snooker and how we're going to line up shots, it doesn't really matter about that stronger vision. Now, if you've just done that test and you find that you haven't got a dominant eye, so you can't really get a confirmed that you're always using your right eye or that you're always using your left eye, then once we go through these explanations in a minute about how to line up the shot and how to sight when you're down, the important thing is that you just pick a way to do it in a consistent way and you just stick to doing that same routine every single time you play snooker. So it doesn't really matter to you that you're not really picking a dominant eye, because you can just pick one of the methods in a minute that we talk about and just stick to that one each time, and that'll give you that nice consistent approach that we want. So let's have a look at then how we sight the shot and how we place our head when we're down on the shot, and all the important things now about sighting. Now we know what that dominant eye is. Right, so I've just found out that I'm a right eye dominant player. I'm also a right-handed player, and we'll talk about in a minute the importance of where you stand based on whether you're left or right-handed. So I've just found out right-handed, right eye. So we can see that if I display the line on the screen here, so this is the line of aim, and the line of aim, the way to think about that is it's always the line that the white is going to travel along. So if I was to remove that red ball out the way altogether, the white is just going to travel in a straight line, and as long as it does that, it would pop that red ball. So that's what we talk about when we mean the line of aim. And later on in this video series, we're going to talk about angled shots and how to line those up. But for now, let's look at this nice straight shot here. So where do I need to stand then to line this shot up? So I know I'm right eye dominant, which means that over distance, it's going to be my right eye that gives me more of the information of this line being nice and straight. So you can see at the moment, this line is going more through the middle of my body here. I'm standing either side of the line, which means that my right eye is actually looking more at this line over here. So I would need to do this to make my right eye where it needs to be to get this shot looking like a nice straight line to me. Now, in the old days of coaching, we were always told to just, if you're right-handed, you start with your right foot on the line of the shot before you even get down. And that's what we're discussing here. We're not talking about being down on the table yet. Forget about your dominant eye for that stage at the moment. We're talking about standing up, lining up the shot here. So here, I'm going to put my right foot on the line of the shot instead, because that's what we're always taught. Now my right eye is over here. It's not really looking at the line of aim. But if I drop my hip slightly, so if I just drop my right hip and just sit down on this hip, my right eye now is right behind this line and I'm sighting it correctly now. I can see this as a nice straight line. So just by that little movement, I've put my dominant eye where it needs to be to line this shot up. So this is all about your pre-shot routine and where you're standing before you line shots up. Now let's say I'm right-handed and I'm left eye dominant. Well, if I've got to get my left eye all the way over to this line here, that means that I've had to lean over a really long way. So maybe it's better for left eye dominant players to stand with that line in the middle of your body, and then you're not having to lean. You're getting the left eye where it needs to be, and you're not having to lean over so that you can see the line of the shot. So I'm always advising players, if you're right-handed and right eye, just start with the foot on the line of aim. You can just lean over very slightly. That puts your right eye where it needs to be for that nice straight line, and then you can do your walk into the shot. If you're left eye dominant and right-handed, you want that line more in the middle of your body. That's going to put the line where you want, and then you can walk into the shot. So what about if you're left-handed then and right eye? Exactly the same thing. If I start with my left foot is now already on the line of the shot, my right eye is a long way away. I would need to really come over here and look over. So if you're left-handed and right eye dominant, do it in the middle of your body, and that's going to put the line more where it needs to be for your right eye, and then you can walk into the shot. If you're left-handed and left eye dominant, I'd just do the same thing, just lean over very slightly, just put my left eye where it needs to be, and then I could do my normal walk into the shot. So that's all you're sighting before you get down to the shot. Really important to know which one of your eyes is that dominant one, as I say, before you walk in. So always reminding people, this is all for your pre-shot routine, standing up behind the shot, before you walk in, before you get down, which one is your dominant eye and where do you need to stand so you visualise the line of aim, which in this case is a nice straight pot, and you see it nice and straight. Now the last bit here that I wanted to add about standing up and sighting the shot is that some players actually don't sight just using their dominant eye. So you might find that for some players, even though they've picked that right eye and they've done those tests, they find that that's their dominant eye, they actually don't put that eye directly behind the line of the shot when they're lining it up. So it might be that they either do it in between both eyes or they've got it even sometimes closer to the other one. So when I'm doing sessions with people, I've got some gadgets, some tools that I've designed that help me to find out exactly where a player's perfect sighting alignment is down on the shot. So it's a little bit more complicated than even the things that I've explained in this video. So I'm trying to give you a good idea about picking that dominant eye, where you might stand in relation to the line of aim. But you now, with all this information that you've got in this video, you've got to figure out where you want to stand behind the shot for you, so that it looks like everything's lined up in a nice straight line, it looks really good, and then we can talk about the next process now, which is what our head position looks like actually down on the shot. Now then, we've moved the camera over so that we're using the bolt line. So we've gone away from that blue spot to use this bolt line, and incredibly useful for just working out our perfect sighting and alignment. So I've just found out that I'm right-handed and right-eye dominant. So I know that I need to stand with my right foot on this line and then just lean over slightly, and that gives me this line being nice and straight. But where does my head need to go when I'm down on the cue? So this is why I already placed my cue on the bolt line like this, so that's a fixed position now. I know that the cue is placed right in the centre of the white, right on the bolt line, and it's in a perfectly straight line. So you can see where I've placed the white just a little bit away from the brown spot, just so that I'm not reaching too much when I get down to this cue in a second. And then I've placed the cue absolutely perfectly on that bolt line, so it's in a nice straight line, and the butt of the cue stays on line as well. Now what you're going to do here is, we know that that's a correct sighting point, and then in a minute we're going to move on to how the stance works and walking in. But at this stage, now I'm going to try and mould myself around this cue. So if I was to put my bridge about where it wants to go, so just imagine you're getting down. Don't touch the cue, because you're going to move it offline and interfere with it being perfectly on this line. But when you get down, you've got to now find where is your perfect head position so that that looks good to you. Now if I get it about there, that looks good to me. It looks like the butt end of the cue is right in the centre of the white, and it looks like I'm in a nice straight line, and I'm just going to poke that white along the bolt line. Now that's, for me, not quite centre tune, it's just going to my right eye slightly. So you can see the way, even though I'm right eye dominant there, that doesn't mean that I've just forced the cue right underneath this dominant eye once I'm down on the shot. When you're further away, it's mostly your dominant eye that gives you the information of that line being nice and straight. Once you get down on the shot, there's all kinds of clever things that your brain is doing, because it's tuning out some of the information from your right eye, some of the information from your left, and it's giving you and creating you an overall 3D image. And that's incredibly important, because, as I said earlier, it's not like shooting a gun when we're playing snooker. If you were just shooting a gun, you can close one of your eyes. You don't need that 3D information, because you're not worried about having that depth perception when you're playing. But of course, with snooker, you absolutely need that depth perception, because that's what helps you maneuver the cue ball around and get position. So when you get down, you'll find that there's a perfect place for you where you can experiment around and go, that looks pretty good to me, like it would be nice and straight. And then you'll find your ideal head position. Now at first you might find that just feels a bit strange and you're not quite 100% sure, but the more you play, the more you practice that, the more your brain will get used to seeing the right image. But I think the thing to do is, just like I've got, even in this video series here, I've got a camera facing the bolt line. You could try doing that even at home. You can just place your cue on a straight line. You could do it in the club, place the cue on the bolt line, and try and get a picture of yourself and find out, do some head movements, find out where that ideal head position is for you, so that you're sighting the shot perfectly. So hopefully that's a good understanding for you there of exactly how sighting works and why that dominant eye is important. So just to recap for me, right-handed, right eye dominant. So I'm going to start with my right foot already on the line of aim. That's going to mean I can just walk straight forward, keeping my right foot on that line, and then when I get down, I've found that chin position there, which looks good for me, and that's going to keep everything hopefully nice and straight. Now, as I always say, everybody, I really hope you found this video useful, and I've always been a little bit reluctant to do a video on sighting and alignment like this, because it's very complicated the way the eyes are working. So I've tried to give you a broad understanding here of the dominant eye, how our eyes work, where you need to stand before the shot. But as you can see, it's not quite as simple as just saying, okay, I've found out that it's my right eye that's my dominant one, and I'll stand up with that eye behind the line of the shot. And when I'm down on the shot, I'll also put the cue under that dominant eye. So when I'm working with players one-to-one on the table, as I say, I've got some gadgets and things that I've designed that I can use for finding exactly where a player's perfect head position is. And then also you've got complicating factors where players might have had vision correction in one eye, so that sometimes players, you know, people have vision correction so that one eye is good for short distance, one eye is good for longer distance, And again, that can sometimes actually complicate things when it comes to playing snooker. So it's a very complicated issue looking at eyes, but hopefully I've given you lots of information to think about. And then you can think about right now getting yourself behind the shot where it all looks good and comfortable to you, where things are lined up, and how to find that ideal head position. So lots to think about. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, remember to give the video a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. I try to post new videos every single week. And for anyone that's interested in any personal coaching, please do get in touch. You can visit my website, www.bartonsnooker.co.uk. I would love to help you with your game, and I'm working with players on this very table all the time to help them to improve on their skills. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.